Welcome back with another banger. It's the React Vibes. Hope you're having a good night. Let's get straight to it.
The video shows a group of men walking up a stairwell at the Edge Lowry apartment complex in Aurora. All of them appear to be carrying rifles and handguns, and the video shot earlier this month. One of the men can be seen talking on a cell phone. They all then gather around a door and go in. Another video clip shows men forcing a door open, but what or who they were searching for, not clear. The video was shot in the building where Cindy and Edward Romero lived until today. They loaded up their stuff and moved out.
It's been a nightmare and I can't wait to get out of here.
This is how Cindy used to lock her front door.
Every day when we come home, we have to do this. Every time we go outside to take out the garbage, every time we try to go to bed at night, we have to keep it like this so nobody can kick in the door.
The couple's car and many others here were riddled with bullets after a shootout at the complex earlier this month. The Romeros say the trouble started when a large number of migrants began moving in. They had not been able to move out for different reasons.
We couldn't get any. We tried reaching out to the resources, but they told us since it wasn't actually a condemned building, we would have to wait until that was the issue, but we didn't want to wait for that. So the only help I got was after talking to you.
We showed council member Danielle Jurinsky the video. Today, she helped the couple move out and find a new place to live.
The city nonprofits have lined up to help the migrants that have come here, but nobody is helping the American citizens, the residents that are trapped in these apartment complexes.
The Romeros tell us others living here had been asking when they'd be moving out.
And this isn't just Americans, this is other Venezuelans that are living under this control, that are being extorted by the control of this gang.
While we were on the property today, even before we left, we were told other people were moving in and taking over the Romero's unit. We did speak to the mayor's office this afternoon. They sent us a statement saying that so far there are no code enforcement violations taking place at this complex. The mayor's office also responding in part for the Aurora Police Department. They're telling us that the police department here has seen that video that we just showed you. There is a lot more to this story. We'll be covering it.
Now that's crazy. They had to go to the news to get help. And the mayor says there's more to the situation. I wonder what it is.
As you said a moment ago, 2 NYPD officers were shot by a man living out of a migrant shelter. That man, Bernardo Raul Castro Mata, after his arrest, actually identified himself as a member of Tren de Aragua and allegedly told police that he crossed the U.S. border, came to New York, and when he got to the shelter in the city, the 19-year-old was recruited by the gang to commit robberies and even given a gun. Now, Castro Mata also told investigators that gang leaders actually have been instructing a lot of their members here in the U.S., especially here in New York City, to bring guns into shelters, and they're able to do so relatively easily by utilizing food delivery services because the food is not scanned through the security system at these shelters. So this is obviously a growing concern, not only here in New York City, but again, across the country, from the West Coast to the East Coast. We do know federal agencies are on this and trying to work with local officials to curb this growing gang activity.
Politics will make it delusional, man. I made a few videos about what was happening in Aurora, Colorado, when those Venezuelan migrants took over those 2 buildings. And a whole bunch of people, like a bunch of Democrats, come in the comment section talking about, oh, this is not true, this is not happening, where's the proof, show the proof, there's no videos. And I'm like, are these people insane? Like, what is wrong with these people? I don't do politics, you know? But it's crazy how delusional some people get. Like, there's countless articles and stories and even a video out there of these people breaking into an apartment with guns, you know? There was this one dude that just commented on the video that I made. They got over like 200,000 views. And he was like, keep seeing people talking about this, but there's no proof. Where's the proof? And I reposted a video. I kept scrolling on TikTok, and I ran into the video of when they were breaking into the apartment and the residents of the building, you know, having to add additional locks to the doors, you know, to feel a little safe, you know, people just moving out. So I reposted on my page, and I was like, go look at the video I just reposted on my page so you can see the proof. But it's like, I'm like, where are these people living? Like, what is going on in these people's heads? Like, these people hate Trump so much that they know that if they admit the fact that there's a migrant crisis in America, that in a way that's almost like co-signing Trump. And they much rather be like, no, this is not happening. No, this is a lie. That's not true. What's the proof? No, and coming up with all kinds of excuses to just deny this reality. That shit is insane to me, how politics can do that to the mind of some people, man. Just not to admit that maybe perhaps the opposing politician was right. Crazy.
Shout out to the Broski Talks. I agree. It's like smoke and mirrors. Now the video's everywhere. This is really happening, folks.
And now to a developing story out of the East County tonight. 2 school bus routes in the Hamul Dolzura Union School District were interrupted for 2 straight days after several migrants tried to board school buses. Our Sarah Legre has the story tonight.
Well, yeah, there have been 2 migrant encounters in the past 2 days involving school buses and young children here at Hamul Dolzura USD. Now, no one was injured and all students are safe, but parents are angry.
Your initial shock is you're helpless.
It's practice night for Nicole Cardinale and her son Apollo. It's the ordinary, but their morning certainly wasn't.
20 illegal migrants tried to get on the bus today at one of our bus stops.
Hours earlier, she got this email letting Nicole know her 8-year-old son was aboard his school bus heading to Hamul Elementary when all of a sudden...
Really confused. He said these adults, they weren't kids. He said, but they had backpacks on, Mom, and they tried to get on our bus. He said, and there was a lot of them.
The district confirmed 20 migrants tried to board the bus Wednesday morning when it stopped to pick up students here along its B route. That's when parents and the driver stepped in, keeping the migrants at bay.
It was definitely really scary.
It also happened Tuesday along Route A, shown here in orange near State Route 94. 3 men walked along the highway trying to stop the bus to, quote, go around their group.
This clip that I'm about to show you is disturbing, especially if you're parents. But I need you to pay this attention and remind us next time you're casting your vote. Understand who is behind this. So this is not just a threat to you. This has now become a large threat to your kids. And we all know these criminal minds, once an idea, it's planted someplace, it spreads across the nations like a fucking fire. Check this out.
A group of migrants tried to board a school bus this morning while it was traveling to a school. The superintendent for the Hamul Dolzura Union School District informed parents of that incident earlier today. It happened at one of the stops on the school district's bus route that heads to Oak Grove Middle School and Hamul Primary. Meanwhile, yesterday afternoon, in a similar area along another route, the superintendent says that a group of migrants tried to stop another bus. Border Patrol, CHP, and the sheriff's office have now been informed of these incidents. The superintendent says that for the safety of everyone, if a driver sees a group of migrants at a bus stop, they will drive past.
So how is the driver now supposed to go? Drive, pay attention to the road, or look at people ambushing and hiding behind the bushes? This is not a fucking solution. The only solutions, in my opinion, is to always introduce people to the consequences of their action. Whatever the fuck you want to understand how that means. You know exactly what I mean. So now we move from school shooting, kids being kidnapped, going home, walking from school, to now let's just kidnap in bulk. And what a better way to do it? Oh, they're already in a bus. Let's just hijack the bus and drive the fucking bus to the borders or whatever dumb area they have to exchange. Like, this is a nightmare for every parent, and especially a nightmare for every child. Imagine these little innocent angels, the trauma they have to go through, knowing that they were just about to get sex slaved, or God knows what, organs trafficking, who knows? I mean, they're not kidnapping them to give them a fucking PhD. And the parents and the people in this county and towns are keep voting for the same incompetent people, expecting different results. I mean, when is enough is enough? When are you gonna start wake the fuck up and realize this past 4 years have been nothing but a open Pandora box? Every possible crazy shit you could think about already happened. This is like the apocalypse on steroid. Use your fucking brain and make sure you cast your vote. Even if I don't care if you don't like the other guy, but it's much better than voting for the exact same fucking thing and expecting different result. Think.
That's right. Think. Well said. Shout out to Tariq Herbig. I agree 100%. To do something continuously and expect a different result is a definition of insanity.
So apparently it's gotten so bad and so hot in Saudi Arabia. This is around the area of Prophet's Mosque, Medina, Saudi Arabia, that they have purchased over 250 umbrellas. And these umbrellas are something out of the ordinary. Like, they are huge, okay? And they create a shaded area of 143,000 square meters. This method alone knocks about almost 50 degrees off the temperature already. and it's so conveniently placed, you can't even tell that it's umbrellas once it closes in. And they had to choose a color sand white because the bright white was actually causing people to burn underneath these umbrellas. But look at how big these things are, y'all. This shit is crazy. And not to mention, they also got these mist fans going on out there too. Remember, just a few months ago, there was over like 1,000 people unalive due to the heat in Saudi Arabia. Y'all remember that? Just a few months ago. So this is what they're doing to prevent this happening any further. And they're basically trying to do the same thing in India as well, because remember earlier this year, you had the streets burning, melting in India. You had cars, you had street lights. So it's literally getting intense out there, y'all. Y'all need to protect yourself. But let me know what you guys think about this video. This video is strictly for entertainment purposes only. I am only raising awareness to interesting situations during these interesting times. Like, comment, and share for more videos like this. Thank you for tuning to my frequency. Make sure y'all follow me on my YouTube for that deeper esoteric knowledge. Let's get this shit. Peace out.
That's really amazing right there. Shout out to Conscious Juice. Those things are massive and there's so many of them. It's crazy how hot it is that they had to invent something like this. It just shows us how important trees are.
I'm sure you've heard of the Mandela effect by now. This phenomenon started in the year 2013, when the former president of South Africa passed away on December 5th of 2013. When the world was mourning his death, thousands of people around the world had a vivid memory of him passing away in prison during the 80s. This became known as the Mandela effect. However, the term actually came up in 2010, when a woman named Fiona Broome realized Nelson Mandela was still alive. Her and many others even remembered the ceremonies on the news, the widow's speech. After Nelson Mandela's passing, mainstream media picked it up and called it collective false memories. But are these truly false memories? Or is this evidence of multiple timelines and parallel universes? In this series, we're going to look at some popular Mandela effects, but we're also going to explore the idea of collapsed timelines, the possible time wars, yes, time wars, that are occurring in the future to manipulate our present timeline. We're going to look at what CERN might possibly have to do with this. And if these are truly false memories, then why is there only two options? If it was false memories, don't you think there'd be hundreds of different ways that people remembered things? But it's always two distinct things that are very close. Now, the Mandela effect became really popular when people began to notice that the popular children's book that most of us read as children was the Berenstain Bears, not the Berenstein Bears. And wait, didn't the Monopoly Man have a monocle? Why doesn't he have one now? I could have sworn it was the Flintstones, not the Flintstones. Do you remember Looney Tunes or Looney Tunes? Was it Oscar Mayer with an E or Oscar Mayer with an A? I could have swore that Fruit of the Loom had a cornucopia, but I guess it didn't. I could have swore that Tweedledee and Tweedledum had a little propeller on their hat, not a green flag. And was Cruella de Vil always spelled DeVille? Was it Cocoa Puffs or Cocoa Puffs? Many people remember the Mona Lisa looking like this, although today she's smiling. These little Debbie cakes, there's no line dividing them, but many people remember a small line that you could break it into two. I could have sworn Curious George had a tail, but he doesn't anymore. We all remember Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, who's the fairest of them all. But apparently she said Magic Mirror on the Wall. The famous quote, Luke, I am your father, never exactly happened. It was just, I am your father. Another famous quote, hello, Clarice, from Silence of the Lambs, isn't in the movie. He just says good morning. Now this one hits close to home. The famous line, Lucy, you got some splaining to do, never happened. Stay tuned, because we're going to talk about collapsed timelines and possible reasons.
Shout outs to JK Ultra. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to what she has to say about this one. I remember the Bernstein Bears, spelled E-I-N. That's just my timeline. Let me know in the comments down below if you remember different.
Ради этого, да, скипнул? Ради этого я скипнул это.
I want to share my experiences from my recent trip to the newly liberated territories of the Russian Federation in the Donbass. My journey took me to Mariupol, Tokmak, Berdyansk, Melitopol, and the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant over my 7-day trip, providing me with firsthand insights that starkly contradicts the lies and the narratives that have been propagated by the mainstream media and the Western political elite here. The following 3 points that I have laid out here are based on my observations, and they reveal a very different reality to what is promoted here in the West. Number 1, Ukraine is not seeking an end to this conflict, but is instead trying to escalate it in an unthinkably dangerous manner. Number 2, the people of the Donbass do not want to remain under Ukrainian control, but instead hold a great admiration for the Russian Federation and for President Putin. Number 3, Ukraine is not defeating Russia, but is instead using its Western support to carry out horrifying acts of terrorism against the people of the Donbass that they claim they want to save. So first, let's talk about Mariupol. It's the first place I went. During the hour-long drive into Mariupol, which we made very late in the night, I saw over 1,000 construction vehicles on the highway into the city. And that's not me being hyperbolic, it's true. I've never seen anything like that in my life. Construction teams are working diligently to rebuild not just the areas that have been destroyed by the war, but the areas that have been neglected for years and years and years by previous Ukrainian governments. In Mariupol itself, in the city, the work of these construction teams was all the more evident. There are new schools, beautiful parks, gyms, theaters, stores, hotels, and thousands of homes that have been given free to the victims of the conflict in Mariupol and for the surrounding areas. Residents express their gratitude for a government that is proactive and committed to responding to their needs. Mariupol residents also proudly shared with me the remarkable efficiency of these construction crews. I talked to one little girl, 14 years old, at a park that I visited in Mariupol, and she told me that the construction teams that Russia sends in can build 2 blocks of infrastructure within 1 to 2 weeks. And I told her how amazing that was, because in America it takes years to get a permit to build at least 1 road. But that was the truth. That's what was really going on, and it was incredible. The massive reconstruction effort essentially shows a nation that is actually committed to rebuilding and supporting its people, which is something that we have long abandoned in this country with our government. Next was my visit to Tokmak. This was located about 15 kilometers from the front line, and this was a very stark revelation for me. Contrary to the claims that Ukraine seeks to save the people of the Donbass from Russian invaders, the truth was far different. The truth was that I witnessed a horrifying campaign of terrorism against innocent civilians living in the city of Tokmak. The first site that we encountered in Tokmak was a massive crater from a missile that had exploded just a few feet from a kindergarten playground, just 2 months before I'd arrived. The windows of the kindergarten were completely shattered, and there was glass all across the schoolyard. In addition to that, we also went on and moved 1 street over, where we saw a civilian building that was hit by a U.S. ATACMS missile. This was nothing new for the people there, because just the street over, we saw another building that had been hit by a U.S. supplied ATACMS missile two weeks after. And there were 2 civilians that were killed in this attack. Several others were injured. I had the opportunity to climb all the way up to the top of that second building that was hit by a U.S. missile. And there was a few of us journalists that went up there. It was very dangerous because the entire roof of the building had collapsed. But what shocked me the most was in the building, I didn't see Russian military supplies. I didn't see guns. I didn't see Kalashnikovs or anything like that. I saw school supplies. I saw children's toys. And I saw everyday household items. When I descended from the top of the building, which was in tatters, I actually had the opportunity to talk to the wife of one of the victims of this attack. Her husband was actually killed in the attack. They tried to save him. His leg got blown off by this U.S. missile, and he bled out on the scene despite the best efforts of the people that were trying to revive him. She explained that Ukraine was routinely targeting their neighborhood with missile strikes fully aware that they were bombing civilian areas rather than military targets. So for every time that Zelensky comes out and begs for more weapons, more missiles, more U.S. support, just know that it's being used to bomb innocent civilians in places like Tokmak and all across the Donbass. Also in Tokmak, we crossed the street one more time to a third building that had been bombed by a U.S. supplied missile 2 weeks before we arrived. So all of this happened in the span of 2 months. In a garden in front of the building that we visited, several elderly residents shared their experiences with us. Some of these residents had actually voted for Zelensky for president in 2019, but now expressed their profound disgust in his actions and the U.S.-backed Ukrainian terrorism affecting their homes. They now voiced their total admiration for Russian President Vladimir Putin, and they had nothing but nice things to say. There was one old woman who barely spoke Russian. She was speaking Ukrainian, and she said one thing in Russian. She said, "Ya tebya, President Putin," which means "I love President Putin." It was very interesting to hear from the actual voices of the people of the Donbass, because everyone in the mainstream media, doesn't matter if it's on the left or the right, has failed to actually report on what the people there are saying. Lastly, and probably most shockingly, was my visit to the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. This power plant has been in the news quite a bit recently. It's the largest nuclear power plant in all of Europe. It has 6 reactors, none of which are operational at the moment. But what I saw there highlighted the grave risk posed by Ukraine's military actions above everything else. Despite the plant being just a few kilometers away from the front line, we were very close to the front line. Thousands of heroic workers continue their duties at the plant each and every day. 95% of these workers worked at the plant when it was under Ukrainian control. However, several points of critical infrastructure at the plant have recently been compromised by Ukrainian drone attacks and shelling. In fact, the director of the plant gave me this right here. This is a fragment from one of the drone attacks on the plant that occurred just feet away from where the reactors lie in the ground. So, he said it was my taxpayer dollars that did this, so I got to keep the fragment. I was very appreciative. One other very alarming sight that I witnessed at the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant was a missile from the United States, which was lodged halfway in the ground, just 100 feet away from the plant's nuclear storage facility. This reckless attack could have led to a catastrophic nuclear disaster, endangering millions of lives. Such actions are far from the moral code of conduct that any real military, any just military, should uphold. In conclusion, my observations from the Donbass reveal a reality that is starkly different from the narratives presented by Western mainstream media and politicians. The truth I've witnessed shows that Ukraine is not on the path to victory, but rather escalating a conflict where there is no need to do so. The horrifying acts of terrorism carried out against civilians in Tokmak and the reckless jeopardization of nuclear safety at the Zaporozhye power plant illustrate a deliberate strategy of violence and escalation rather than a genuine pursuit of peace. The people of the Donbass, who have endured immense suffering, are now experiencing a measure of hope and rebuilding under Russian efforts, a hope that stands in stark contrast to the false portrayals of Russian aggression and Ukrainian victimhood. I think today, more so than ever before, we need to heed the words of the now free Julian Assange, who once said, "If wars can be started by lies, peace can be started by the truth." It is imperative that we confront these falsehoods and work towards de-escalating the conflict. And in fact, for all the journalists in attendance here today, I encourage you to visit the Donbass yourself from the side that's been liberated. CNN has indicated that they want to come out with me on my next visit to the Donbass, so we'll see if they stick to their word. But if any of you want to come out, we can talk. Most importantly, we must commit ourselves to reporting the truth, shining a light on the innocent civilians caught in the crossfire, and seeking a path to genuine peace. Only through truth and transparency can we hope to resolve this conflict and prevent the devastating possibility of a global catastrophe. Thank you.
Shout outs to Jackson Hinkle reporting on his 7-day trip to the Russian-Ukrainian conflict zone and other areas. Now, this was at the United Nations. What he just said is a stark contrast to what's been shown in Western media. I agree. After Zuckerberg coming out and sending that letter to Congress, truth and transparency is a must.
This is the shocking moment a woman vanishes without a trace after falling into a 26-feet sinkhole in Kuala Lumpur. Vijaya Lakshmi has now been missing for 5 days after being swallowed by the sinkhole when the street collapsed beneath her in the capital of Malaysia. An initial search from Malaysian rescue teams found Ms. Lakshmi's shoes, but there are no other signs of her, the Telegraph report. Datuk G. Paramaswaran, the president of the Malaysian Water and Wastewater Quality Safety Association, told the Straits Times, "Sewage water is also very harsh, and the current has a minimum flow speed of 1 meter per second. Theoretically, she could have traveled up to 86.4 kilometers within 24 hours.
May her soul rest in peace. 5 days, still haven't been found. That's creepy.
Hey guys, welcome back. But first, cosmic brownies. So a lot of people in the comments are saying that there's 2 sizes available. So both of these exist, and personally, I haven't seen one of these since I was a little Debbie. So thank you to the people who put their own health at risk to eat these things. I'm sorry. I truly love you guys. Randy Kramer. This is a clip from the Gaia show called Cosmic Disclosure. Take a look at his explanation of the Mandela effect.
And in order for it not to cease to exist, that timeline then merges with another timeline. So it doesn't cease to exist, it joins another timeline, and then that has to merge and go forward.
Okay, so what causes a timeline to collapse?
Timeline collapsing is a result of some of the other experiments that are being done in opening up, in some cases, very large portals, multidimensional portals, big enough that you could, fly a ship through. And some of those have incurred, let's just say, temporal accidents.
Here's one possible example of a temporal accident. This event happened on September 10th of 2008. But NASA just wanted to clarify, the world didn't end. Here's what didn't happen. No, there was not the creation of a microscopic black hole.
Things were completely different on one timeline to another, and now they've come together. And so you have people who just remember things completely differently because they were on a different timeline.
But if CERN collapsed an entire timeline, I'm sure they'd admit to it, right? I mean, they did sing and dance to the song Happy. He's holding 3 signs. One that says Mandela, one that says Bond number 1, and one that says We are happy at CERN. Mandela? But what's Bond number 1? Well, who was the first James Bond? Barry Nelson. Nelson Mandela. The Mandela effect. And what the hell does that sign say? Is that for the other timeline? What's their effect called? Who exactly is this guy? Physicist John Ellis.
Here's my favorite theory. I'm going to have to say string theory. Of course, the standard model is fantastic.
So what exactly is string theory? So take a look at any object around you. I'm going to use this really awesome book that I just got. So of course a book is made of a cover and pages, but on a much smaller level, it's made of molecules, like everything around us. And those molecules are made of atoms. And it's important we go over this because this creepy portal looking thing at CERN, the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, is a giant atom smasher. Now back to string theory. We have molecules. When you look deeper into molecules, you have atoms. When you look deeper into an atom, you have a nucleus. When you go deeper, you have neurons and protons. When you go deeper, you have quarks. And now here's where string theory comes in. Theoretical physicists theorize that when you go deeper, everything is just a little string that's vibrating, and that none of these things are really particles at all. They're just a bunch of vibrating strings. Everything around us is just a collection of vibrating strings. And this is why some people call this the theory of everything. Now, if you guys go back to my Earthshift series, Marina Jacobi channeled this from aliens in the future. Yes, I said aliens from the future. And these aliens say that the quantum structure is these little waves of frequency, which just so happen to look like little vibrating strings. When 3 of them match, they create a trinity. When 3 more match, they create another trinity. And when these 3 trinities meet, they begin to create a reality. 3, 6, 9. And here's a quote from Nikola Tesla. If you only knew the magnificence of 3, 6, and 9, then you would have the key to the universe. Now, of course, Marina Jacobi's work is not recognized by quantum physicists. However, it doesn't sound so far off. If everything is just vibrating little strings, and these strings come together to form particles, now let's take a look at one of the most famous studies in quantum theory. That by simply watching something, as the observer, you are affecting the reality. And I know this is boring, but we have to know this in order to understand the Mandela effect and to deal with the naysayers who think they have such good memories. Like, no, reality's not even fucking real, dude. Like, come on. And we need to know this because if everything in the universe is made of these strings, what could happen if a bunch of people are just smashing them? Only appear to be particles because they're being observed, then what the fuck are they really smashing? And if time is simultaneous, hey guys, we're coming in hot with this next part. I needed you to understand what the theoretical physicists are saying so we can get to my expertise as a theoretical conspiracist. And it's important you know those things because when you go back to the Earthshift series, this is more proof that you shape your reality, that you can create new timelines, and that you can manifest the world that you want to live in. Now, if time is simultaneous, and the future is technically now, and you go back to the concept of our entire reality and universe being a hologram, then a bunch of vibrating strings taking the form of things that appear to be matter, simply because we're observing them, then maybe all of the realities and all of the dimensions are using those exact same strings, but they're appearing different to each thing that's observing them. And you know me, I'm gonna bring it back to Dolores Cannon. The Convoluted Universe, Book 1. The chapter's called Parallel Universes. They're never absolutely identical. There's always at least one thing different, and that one thing is enough to make another universe. And it can be as small as a grain of sand being positioned differently on a beach, which explains why a lot of the Mandela effects are extremely close. Either it's an E or an A. And what makes it more complex is that there is always new universes being created. Every action, there's more than one possible outcome. In your universe, one outcome is realized, but all the energy of the other outcomes have to go somewhere. And so these different outcomes that were not realized in your universe cause another universe that is practically identical. It gives the example that your nose itches. You can rub your nose, you can scratch your nose, or you can sneeze. If you sneeze, that's the universe that becomes realized and perceived by you, but the energy of the two other outcomes, two other universes come into being. Now, of course, this is confusing. How is everything happening at once? But it says that happening implies a beginning and an end, and we have to look at it as existing, because existing is undefined. So if each individual person is able to constantly create new timelines and parallel universes, what could cause thousands or millions of people to shift into a parallel reality at the same time? Now, you might remember this from my Earthshift series. The same aliens that gave Marina Jacobi that information gave Barbara Marciniak this information. Timelines, the fabric of time, and the tubes that run through these fabrics of time are all hooked into primary events. Without primary events, you cannot hook into a timeline. The splitting of the atom was a primary event. The invention of the internet was also a primary event. And guess where the internet originated? CERN. That's right, www. Which you might remember this from my Apocalyptic Prophecy series. The Hebrew alphabet is represented by numbers. So www in Hebrew means 666. And coincidentally, CERN's logo is also 666. But what does this all mean? Oh, and the reason that string theory is really important? It originated at CERN.
Shout out to JK Ultra breaking that down. I did not know the internet was created at CERN. From her last series, we understood what the www stood for. I like how she connected that. But speaking of string theory, back in my last video, when they were saying North Korea was caught faking, the one employee that they spoke to was talking about a research paper based on string theory. That's crazy. Let me know if you caught that down in the comments below.
They reached over and ripped over my shirt to see if I was wired, if I was wiring and recording them. And they were the most sophisticated satanic warrior type person. They knew 5-6 languages. They knew the ancient Twilight languages. They knew how to conjure. They knew how to use Belteshazzar, Okwam, all these old Pictish languages of the Druids to summon. They are the real Luciferian. They've been through many human sacrificial things. So they sat there to tell me some of those things, what they've been involved with, how they sacrifice a human. I'm listening to all this stuff from them. And then they said to me, you have no idea, Russ, how many of us there are out there. How many satanic, they use the term, chosen ones. You have no idea how many. You have no idea what's coming. We smell Christian blood. We are waiting for our day. And when the call is given, millions of us will be released. And they looked at me and said, you believe in revivals and you believe in Pentecost and the power of God. You believe in all that. We believe in the Black Awakening, a multi-continental release of power to activate the program demonized, where they've weaponized the demonic powers to these super soldiers.
The objective of the project was to create super soldiers.
We've been able to create super soldiers.
Tell him I'm going to take the thing about the super soldiers out.
Okay, so no super soldiers.
Are they waiting for a specific time to unleash their power?
Yeah, they are, because they have to do it at the moment the Antichrist is, like you read in 2 Thessalonians 2, that it's caught to echo, the restrainer is holding back the apocalypse of the Antichrist, the unveiling in his movement. So right now he's held restrained. Soon as he who restrains is removed, soon as that occurs, we have White Horse, the release of the Antichrist. Instantly, we have the release of the red, it says the whole earth. Arene, peace is taken from the whole earth, and all of a sudden, it doesn't give the details, but all of a sudden, on a global scale, people are released to begin to, and the Greek word is sphadzo, slaughter, begin to slaughter people. It's used of animal ritual butchery to begin to slaughter individuals. That's exactly how they defined it to me back in the 90s. And we've heard this again and again and again. So that scenario fits the Masonic version of Chaos Before a New Order. It fits Father Meradon from the Cathedral of the Black Goat, his book, The Devil's Bible. It fits that scenario too. So some of the oldest, darkest occultists, the idea of chaos first, a collapsing of everything so that a new order can rise, that's all by design. And we've been given the heads up in prophecy, but all prophecy has boots on the ground. It'll all, eventually happen. So I do believe that millions and millions of these trained, programmed, altered, demonized super soldiers, whether we want to say it or not, they believe they're being raised to help bring the Antichrist in.
The Antichrist.
The Antichrist. Well, these are supposed to be the events that signal the birth of the Antichrist.
That's true in Germany, when we were in Germany, when we went to Wadelsburg Castle. That's true in Poland, when we went there. That's true in Switzerland. It's true in Canada. So when we talk about our research in 38 years worldwide, there may be well over 100 million generations of them. And if even half, or even if 10% were intact, like say the United States, remember the Vegas? Look what he did. Look what that guy did. Okay, notice what would happen if 10,000 of them, or like Colorado, or like in Arizona, what if 10,000 of them were released in 1 week? That's their plot plan, and biblical prophecies ahead of that to say, here is what is going to happen, and from that a global monetary collapse, and from that's all that chaos is coming. So Revelation 13, a whole new order with the Antichrist can come.
The one, the only, the Antichrist.
The four faces of the Antichrist on his rise to power.
Doc, it sounds to me like you're talking about the Antichrist.
Very interesting stuff. I wish I knew who this guy was who was speaking with his in-depth point of view from the Black Awakening side. So there's two sides to every story.
This is probably the most important tick that I've ever done because Joseph Biden just announced that he was the beast. That's next on the trumpet. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. It scares me to show you this next slide. Joe Biden first assumed the office of the president in January 20th, 2021. And 42 months after that date is July 20th, 2024. Yesterday. 42 months later. He introduced the harlot right here, arrayed in purple, decked in gold, precious pearls. It's right there. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. 6 buttons on the left sleeve, 6 pearls around her neck, and 6 buttons on the right. The harlot. It's really happening right now. The end times. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the assaults of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, and against the worldly governors, the princes of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness, which are in the high places. For this cause, take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to resist in the evil day, and having finished all things, stand fast. Revelation 13, verse 5. It's the next thing happening. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples, and multitudes, and nations, and tongues. So I can follow the trumpet for more. I got a ton of information on this, and I'm getting ready to let it all out now. I love you in Jesus' name.
Shout outs to the trumpet. I never seen somebody break down in the middle of the video. The man was touched. But yeah, that's a creepy coincidence, I must say.
What's bizarre is she's trying to frame herself as Miss Black Lives Matter, when in reality, Kamala Harris was the queen of mass incarceration. Kevin Cooper was hours away from receiving lethal injection. Hours away from it. His lawyers asked that DNA evidence be acquired in order to make sure he was actually guilty of the crime. And Kamala Harris's office tried to prevent DNA evidence from being acquired. They wanted Kevin Cooper to be executed, but the governor of California disagreed. They acquired DNA evidence, and the execution was stopped. The New York Times tells us that she feels really bad about it, for whatever that means.
So she went wrong.
And people can also recall that while she was head of the California State Attorney General's office, over 1,000 people were locked up for smoking marijuana. She presided over jailing a lot of people. And on top of that, the drug labs in the state of California that were being used by the police were turning up false positive results. And yet, Kamala Harris's office did not tell the defense attorneys or the judges about this. They knew that the drug labs were turning over false positives, and people went to prison because her office concealed that their drug labs were turning up false positives. And another thing about Kamala Harris, I don't know if people saw, but there's a video of Kamala Harris where she's bragging about how she jailed the parents of children who were truant from school.
I would not be standing here were it not for the education I received. And I know many of us will say the same thing. And I believe a child going without an education is tantamount to a crime. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco. And And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned because we didn't know at the time whether I was going to have an opponent in my re-election race. But I said, look, I'm done. This is a serious issue, and I've got a little political capital, and I'm going to spend some of it.
Have you seen the clip? And she gets up there, and it's the same kind of thing. She's giggling. Yes, I had the idea that we could lock up parents who are truant from school. You know, I wouldn't be anywhere in my life if it weren't for my education. And so not giving a child their education is a crime. And so I jailed parents, and she's giggling about it. It's just so great. And, you know, I see so much in U.S. media. They like to trivialize incarceration. There's so many shows on Netflix and all of that where it ends towards the end where someone goes to jail, but it's part of the happy ending. It's okay. And they don't seem to realize what that means. You know, when one member of a family, when a father or a mother goes to prison, or a brother or a sister, it hurts the entire family. And when Kamala Harris is up there giggling about, I locked up these parents because their kids weren't in school. You know, yeah, kids need to be in school. The kids aren't getting to school is a problem. But the worst thing you could do is then throw their parents in jail. That's not going to help the situation in any conceivable way. But when she's joking about it, and she's laughing about it, Kamala Harris, she says, what did she say? She said, well, I wouldn't be anywhere if it wasn't for my education. It's about her. The big line when she was calling out Joe Biden, when she was trying to contend with Joe Biden in the presidential election, what did she shout at Joe Biden? She shouted, that little girl was me.
You know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
And then her campaign started churning out T-shirts with the face of 10-year-old Kamala Harris on them. Do you remember this?
Yes.
It's almost like she wants us to vote for her because she was once a 10-year-old child. I mean, that's what it sounds like. What's particularly interesting is, you remember when Barack Obama was running for president. We knew everything about Barack Obama. We knew all about Barack Obama's pastor. We knew about Barack Obama's father from Kenya. We knew the school he went to in Indonesia. But Kamala Harris, barely anybody knows anything about Kamala Harris. Well, Kamala Harris's mother, who's now deceased, was from India, was a cancer researcher. And Kamala Harris's father, Donald Harris, was a Marxist economist and is a Marxist economist, a professor at Stanford University. He was an advisor to the government of Michael Manley in Jamaica. And he and Kamala are estranged from one another. He did not attend Kamala's inauguration as vice president. They're not on good speaking terms. But the more you look at it, it's very clear that Kamala Harris sees herself as a victim. The way Kamala Harris speaks, the world has been unfair to her. And she blames Donald Harris for that to some degree or other. We don't know why. We also, there's rumors, we don't really know what happened when she was in Quebec. We just know she never talks about the years that she spent in Quebec. But Kamala Harris thinks that she is a victim. And she wants the whole world to know that that little girl was her. And she wants vengeance. And she wants to make people pay. And she wanted to make Kevin Cooper pay. And she wanted to make those parents pay. That's what leftism is if it's stripped of economics. If it's stripped of class struggle. If it's stripped of a desire to have the people rise up and control the means of production. If it's just anger. If it's just revenge. It's just a call for destruction, a call for rebellion. That's what Kamala Harris is. Kamala Harris, she's very much a guillotine meme. That's what she is. It's the glorification of punishment, a desire for revenge, a desire for destruction. And that if you look at the history of socialism around the world, the strength of socialism wasn't the guillotines. It wasn't the firing squads. It wasn't the persecution. That's not what people remember the strength of socialism being. They just did a poll. 75% of Russians say that the Soviet Union was the best time in their history. But they're not thinking that because of executions. This was from a PBS documentary. They interviewed a woman named Tatiana Fedorova.
Stalin set a task. Build this or build that. And thanks to the fact that people trusted him and this enthusiasm of young people, it was possible. Remember, this was a country where people were illiterate, lived in virtual darkness, wore birch bark shoes. Even now, I think it's like something out of a fairy tale. How is it possible at one of the most difficult times to raise these great construction sites? It was only possible through the unity of the people and the love of the people for their idol.
And the reason Stalin remains wildly popular in Russia, it's not because he executed people, it's because he mobilized them to build that country up from nothing. This was a country... He built some of the world's largest power plants. He wiped out illiteracy, and he built a modern industrial country. He raised millions of people up out of poverty. And then they fought off the Nazi invaders, and then they rebuilt the country again. And a few years later, they were the first country in outer space. And the strength of socialism was not that it punished people and that it persecuted people, but rather that it enabled people to go out and build and construct. I've said to many people, I'm not a socialist because I want to destroy America. I'm a socialist because I want to save America. And we have to save America from the horrors that are being unfolded by an irrational system where profits come before people. I want to save America. I want to build a better world. If all the apparatus they've created for destroying people, for imprisoning people, for breaking people psychologically, could be utilized to build and to construct. If popular power were put in control of the means of production and control of the state apparatus of the United States, we could build something very, very beautiful.
They want you to be mad at Russia and China instead of the horrors that are sitting not very far from here off Wall Street, who are actively getting bailouts in the billions, who arguably even in the trillions, for their gambling debts. That's what we're here against, and that's why we're making a stand for freedom of speech, because they're going after the movement and anyone who stands against the imperialists, because they know a real threat that's rising. They know we authentically represent the American people. They know that the American people are ready for a change and much more into the wars. And that's why they're cracking down on our First Amendment. They're cracking down on our Fourth Amendment. They're cracking down on all the civil liberties we know and love.
I wish I knew who that guy was. He was making some great points. It really reminds me of Fred Hampton. He used to talk about socialism all the time. The Black Panther Party versus capitalism. Very interesting to see that old documentary from PBS with the old lady from the Soviet Union. Very interesting to see her point of view. No matter what, at the end of the day, make sure you go rock the vote.
Kamala is the name of a Hindu goddess from Mesopotamia. Kamala is one of the female offsprings of this devil right here, and he is one of the three primary forms of Devi. Kamala of Devi, the laughing goddess. And that's next on the trumpet. She was born in 1964, and this is what year it is now, the year of the dragon. The harlot of Babylon is here. The laughing goddess. Revelation chapter 17. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and was glittered with gold, precious stones and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand, filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. So this has been in the works for quite some time. Purple, gold, pearls, 6 buttons on each sleeve, laughing with a golden cup in her hand. The Word of God. That one. You can read all about the beast that put her into power after he served for exactly 42 months. And that matches the book of Revelation perfectly. Daniel chapter 12. The man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, lifted his right hand and his left hand towards heaven. And I heard him swear by him who lives forever, saying, I will be for a time, times, and half a time, when the power of the holy people has been finally broken. All these things will be completed. And that fancy talk for times and half a time, that means 42 months, right here. This is what time I woke up this morning, and I go by Ezekiel 33:3. And that scripture says that when I see the sword fall upon the land, I'll blow the trumpet and warn the people. So like and follow the trumpet for more. And in Jesus' name, have a blessed day.
Today we're going to discuss the possibility that there might be a division of the government that handles timelines. And could that have been the inspiration for the Christopher Nolan movie Tenet? The the only reason that I was able to follow along is because I watched this episode of Cosmic Disclosure about Time Wars.
Time Core. They regulate all time travel.
Who's in control of the Time Core, though?
Time Core is in control of time.
Yeah, and who's in control of them?
They are associated with the military, but they don't answer to the military, nor do they answer to any political or ruling bodies. They actually are operated under mandates to protect the time-space stream and will do whatever they deem is necessary or required to keep the time stream clear.
So I'll summarize some more of what he says in this episode, which this is season 10. The episode is called Time Wars. So he claims that Time Core is stationed in the future, that if you go to the location of their headquarters, you would not see their headquarters there because they're stationed in the future. And their headquarters is basically in a temporal bubble, a time bubble. And that basically they know they did their job if they look out the window and there's a world left. That some days they look out and it's just devastation. And other days they look out and the world is thriving. And that basically they're calculating algorithms. The smartest people on Earth are calculating these algorithms so that when something happens to our timeline, they're able to pinpoint what happened, travel to that moment, and make adjustments. Now, the biggest issue for them is time-traveling species from the future. And if you remember this book by Barbara Marciniak, which also said that there's beings that are manipulating our timeline in a way that we believe our human history is different because we only perceive that things could have came from the past and that the future hasn't occurred yet. So when certain beings change things in the future, we think some of these artifacts are from the past, but some of them are from the future. And in this movie, very similar to what Randy Kramer is saying, divisions of the government that are stationed in the future are using algorithms and weaponizing these algorithms to make changes in our present. And the reason why his future self and present self couldn't meet, they could rip a hole in time or create realities that they never existed.
Yo, this is some mind-blowing stuff right here. First thing that came to mind was The Umbrella Academy on Netflix. How they jump timelines and jump in at pivotal points in history. This is some fascinating stuff right here.
Here's something wild happening in the Philippines right now. The FBI are currently looking for the owner of the universe, and they believe that he is hiding underground in the kingdom of Jesus Christ. Yeah, you see, this is Apollo Kibuloy. He says that he's the appointed son of God and beloved pastor to 7 million people, but authorities say that he's a cult leader and wanted for horrendous crimes. So, take your pick. He's on the FBI's most wanted list for allegedly trafficking women to the US from the Philippines, and local police have been looking for him for months now. But Kibuloy, who is even the spiritual leader for the former president of the Philippines, said that they will never catch him alive. But then, just recently, a staggering 2,000 police raided his Kingdom of Jesus Christ compound, and one of his supporters even died from a heart attack trying to defend it. I mean, this place is so massive that they even have their own events arena that has a higher capacity than Manchester United's stadium. No wonder bro believes that he's the owner of the universe. And using equipment that is believed to be able to detect people behind walls and underground based on their heartbeat alone, police found an eerie secret layer 90 feet underground. Reports claim that they are separated into 3 levels to divide women based on their attractiveness. Now, police haven't found Kibuloy yet, but they still believe that he is hiding somewhere at this massive compound.
Bro, that was massive. My man got a football stadium underground. Like, yo. Yeah, I feel a Netflix special coming up.
A Greek coastline is covered in a blanket of dead, rotting fish. But why? More than 100 tons of dead fish were collected after a mass die-off linked to extreme weather fluctuations. The rotting sea of dead fish is said to have come from Lake Karla in central Greece, 12 miles from the coast of Volos. The mass die-off is believed to be climate-related and caused by water levels abruptly rising following deadly floods in 2023, and then suffering from low rainfall and excessive heat waves ever since.
Hey guys, welcome back. I'm so exhausted I was gonna go to bed, but I saw this really cool stuff, so.
Berenstein timeline is in the 17th dimension.
Maybe later, sis. I'm really into this book. Flash Grizzly in the 17th dimension. 17th dimension? You've heard of the 3rd dimension and the 4th dimension. Well, the 17th dimension is so far out that you can't reach it even if you go at the speed of light. Well,
What? Okay, so personally, I think it's probably edited. But that was pretty cool. Looking through an old Palm Pilot.
This doorway, what happens? And it's fucking...
I dug it out, and I noticed that the Berenstain had said Berenstain in that room. But I come out here into just the normal other part of the house, and it says this. So, just so you know I'm not crazy, I'm going to show you, as I pass through this doorway, what happens, and it's fucking weird. Alright, it happens when it gets in the room. See it? And then back out here.
I sleep in here.
I think it's interesting that the book is called On Time. My personal opinion is that this is also edited, although very fun to watch.
The Bernstein Bears! Oh, Goldilocks.
So it says Berenstain, but it sounded like he said Berenstein, didn't it?
The fact that you like me right now. You like me.
Okay, I did fall asleep. But this famous quote, "You like me, you really like me," is now, "Right now you like me." What's interesting is that her brother, Rick Field, works at CERN on the Large Hadron Collider. And according to them, when their mother, Margaret Field, was in the movie The Man from Planet X in 1951, that this story inspired both children. It inspired Sally to become an actress like her mom, and it inspired Rick to work at CERN.
You love me. You really love me.
So as you saw, Jim Carrey was remembering it the old way. Now in Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal Lecter doesn't say, "Hello, Clarice." But once again, Jim Carrey quoting in a movie,
Hello, Clarice. It's good to see you again.
That's quite a wrap you're wearing. Who is this ghastly man? You must be the Monopoly guy. Hey, thanks for the free parking.
interesting because he's in a movie about erasing memories, how his life isn't real, just a TV show, a movie about synchronicities and their deeper meaning. It makes you wonder if his entire career is teaching humanity the truth about our reality.
In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Yeah.
Now that was crazy. She had a lot of receipts on that one. Yeah, like I said, I remember STEIN. Looks like Jim Carrey be leaving a lot of Easter eggs. Shout out to JK Ultra.
This tarantula is the victim of the deadly parasitic fungus, cordyceps. As seen in The Last of Us, the parasitic pathogen takes over the animal's body and controls it in order to spread its deadly spores. After it kills the host, it erupts out of its body, infecting more. Fortunately, humans are too warm-blooded to be infected, so a zombie apocalypse is unlikely for the moment.
Hey everyone, we have stumbled across something truly incredible tonight. In front of me is a tarantula that, unfortunately for it, has become infected by cordyceps. Now, for those of you who don't know what cordyceps is, this is the zombie fungus that's the inspiration for the hit video game and TV show The Last of Us. And, well, this unfortunate tarantula is a character in his own movie here tonight. Now, he was infected by this fungus, and it took over his nervous system and forced him to come to this location. And then as he died, the fungus sprouted out of his body, allowing the spores to spread to another unsuspecting tarantula. And this is actually a very rare species of cordyceps. We rarely encounter tarantulas like this. And when I say species of cordyceps, it's true. Each group of invertebrates has their own species of cordyceps, which infects them. So this is a truly horrific, but also incredible thing for our team to have found tonight.
That's totally horrific. Shout outs to Kitola. So when this became that, it spread to another spider? So is it gonna keep spreading? Like, and two, how did they come across this? Like, whoa, in the middle of the night at that.
This is the stuff of nightmares. Recently, a group of people decided to go on the Sky Screamer at Six Flags in Mexico. But as they got to the top and started spinning, a massive storm suddenly intensified. And to add to their panic, they saw everyone on the ground being evacuated by staff because of it. The ride, which normally spins at 64 miles per hour, stopped dead, leaving them stranded 242 feet in the air. For 10 long minutes, they were battered by the storm, wondering if this is really how it ends, before they were finally brought down to safety. Moral of the story? Don't go on any rides in any storms.
Shout out to Dylan Page. Yeah, I definitely lose it on that for sure. I'm wondering why they just didn't bring him down in the first place. 10 minutes is a long time when you're that high up in the air, watching a whole park evacuate.
Now I want to explore what is the purpose of the Mandela effect. So let's look at a very brief history about the impact of Nelson Mandela on the world. Nelson Mandela is considered one of the ultimate figures of peace in modern history. South Africa was extremely racially divided. Even though 70 or more % of the population was black, it was being controlled by a small percentage of white people. South Africa was extremely segregated. Black Africans were not allowed to vote, not allowed to run for office, didn't have access to education, and the land was getting torn up by diamond mining, which of course only the white population was profiting from. And this in the 40s, 50s, and 60s was when Nelson Mandela started to come into power through an organization called the ANC, which they initially started with peaceful protesting. But when the government retaliated with violence, the ANC also became destructive, which led to a young Nelson Mandela being imprisoned for 27 years. Now, this is a really interesting YouTube page. It's called What If Alt History. And this person plays out different things in history if they went differently. So he explores what would have happened if Nelson Mandela actually died in the 80s. And it's really interesting what he explores, but the biggest thing is that South Africa would have probably went into a civil war and divided into two separate countries. But in this current timeline, Nelson Mandela survived prison and came out to be the first democratically elected president of South Africa. He was the first black president, but the first actual democratic president in the first election they ever did. And the reason he's such a figure of peace, is because when he became president and had the power to make changes, he didn't retaliate, he didn't act out of revenge. He acted out of compassion and tried to unite the two groups, which he did successfully. And you could see in their flag here that he united the colors of the country's black population and the red, white, and blue of the white population into a all-encompassing flag. Now, in this famous interview with Oprah, she asks, how could you go through the torture and imprisonment for 27 years and not have a cold heart and not be bitter? How do you come out of that experience with love and compassion and unite people?
On earth, you must try and use that period for the purpose of transforming your country into what you desire it to be. And therefore you had to reject all negative features in your own soul, in your blood system, and focus your attention on the positive.
How one person can be a catalyst for change, how he united a divided country, and how his message to the world was to use your time on earth to change the world around you. How you change the world around you from within yourself. And in the previous parts of this series, how the universe naturally corrects itself off of failed timeline. And when a timeline fails, it will then merge into a successful timeline. So it does make sense that a extremely impactful person that changed the world, dying in prison under the control of their oppressors, could have possibly been a failed timeline. But my question is, why do some of us remember the other reality? What's the purpose of that? Now, this is my theory as to why some of us remember the other timeline. And if you've already watched my Earth Shift series, you know how I feel. I feel that a small group of people could change a collective timeline of the planet and shift the planet into a higher dimension. I think the purpose of us even remembering the Mandela effect is to have the proof of timelines in a way that people understand. When we talk about splitting timelines and parallel realities, it's confusing. But when someone knows in their heart that there was a damn cornucopia on the Fruit of the Loom logo, it makes multiple timelines and alternate realities. It makes it easier to understand. And it teaches a collective of people, of course, not everybody. Not everyone's going to shift the timeline of the planet. So who cares if they get it? But if you're one of the people who see this timeline shift, then you might be one of the people, one of the 3 waves of volunteers that I talked about in the Earth Shift series. Maybe you're one of those people who's meant to shift the timeline of the planet. And you need to understand how fluid the timelines are, how time is not solid, how the past is not solid. Like, yeah, so we can change the future, but also the past has changed. So this is your sign to start creating the future that you want to see. If one man, Nelson Mandela, could change an entire country, then go back to the 144,000 video I did, because less than 1% of the population can change an entire planet.
And that's a wrap. Hope you enjoyed tonight's rabbit hole. Before we go, I want to give a huge shout out to Starlight, Start Bright, on becoming the channel's newest member. Thank you, Starlight. I appreciate your support. Peace and blessings. If you haven't already, please take a second
just to smash that like, subscribe, ring that notification bell,
just to make sure algorithm know what's up. So what we gonna do, y'all? That's right. Run these numbers up. Thanks again. Until next time.